Good morning, friends. Today I'm going to be making some plain old white bread because, well, we wanted to make different types of sandwiches, and sometimes it's just a way to change things up. So in my mixing bowl, I am using my KitchenAid to do this. I have 1 teaspoon of my yeast and 1 teaspoon of sugar. To that, I'm going to add some warm water. I'm going to let this sit for 5 minutes or so because I want to wake up that yeast because I keep it in my refrigerator. And then I'm just going to go ahead and make my white bread. Now, I have a full video on how to do this. I will link it down below because you don't need to see me go through that whole process once again. Go ahead and make that, but I'm going to save some of that dough because I'm going to eat it for breakfast. And I'll show you what I'm doing with that in a few minutes. Okay, I have my bread dough here. I'm going to cover it with a towel and let it rise until it's doubled in size. And then I pinched off a piece here, as you can see, and I just have it resting. Right now the gluten is tight and it's firm and it needs time to rest. So give it, 20 minutes to 30 minutes, and then I'll be able to go on with my next step. But I also want to talk to you about that ferment or that starter that I made here and show you what I've done with it. Right, here's my ferment. What I've done is I took it out of the refrigerator a couple of days ago. I'm changing the flavor profile on this from a mild to a sourdough. That's one nice thing about these things. You could take out half of it, you could take out a portion of it, leave it out and let it ferment further and get that sour flavor to it. Now, what a lot of people do, or they tell you to do, and how I learned how to make sourdough was you put in, like a cup of flour, cup of water, let it sit for a couple of days, discard half of that, add some more. I don't do that because to me, if you don't use the discard for one, or you don't have a plan to use it, it's a waste. So all I do, pretty simple, I just take and add every day. I add a scoop of flour, and if it's too thick, I add some water, and I just stir it in. What you're doing is you're feeding it so that those yeast, natural yeast, this happens to have yeast from that little bit we used, will have something to eat. If it doesn't look like it's doing anything, add 2, or take some out and use it. But anyway, I wanted to show you that because, again, it's using something I've already have. I happen to love sourdough, so now I can make sourdough pizza crust, I can make sourdough bread, sourdough biscuits, sourdough pancakes, pretty much anything made with sourdough. I can use this after a few days. So I wanted to show you that, okay? And I'll get back to you in just a little bit, and I'll show you what I'm making for breakfast this morning. All right, I let my dough rest for a little bit. You can see it's rested when you can leave a finger imprint. And I'm just going to divide this into thirds approximately. I'm going to try to get 3 roughly equal balls here. Good enough for me. 2 go to the side, lightly flour counter. I'm going to squish it down just a bit. And just like, you do with any other fried bread, you roll it out. I'm going to roll, I have a cast iron pan, so I have that heating. You don't have to have cast iron, but I have my cast iron pan heating on the stove. This is sort of like I did the tortillas, If you do not have yeast, I use flour, water, and I like to put just a little bit of oil in it. Makes the dough a little more soft, tender, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to roll this out as thin as I can, and then I'm going to go over to the stove and fry it up. All right, I have my frying pan here. Just like I did with the tortillas, you're just going to lay them in your pan. Let them brown on each side. And you can see it goes pretty quick. Get some nice bubbles in these. I could have browned that a little bit more. But it'll puff up, and like I said, you get these nice bubbles, and it can almost turn into like a pita type thing if these bubbles get good enough. And then you could, slice it, and I think it's kind of fun to watch. My bubbles, my bubbles, my bubbles. Of course, it's going to deflate after you take it off the pan. I'm waiting to see if my bubbles will combine. There it goes. That little bit of yeast makes a big difference, doesn't it? Isn't that fun? All right, well, I'm going to finish these up, and then I'm going to scramble my eggs, and I'll show you what we're having for breakfast. Right, there's my simple breakfast. I have scrambled eggs. I put a little bit of cheddar cheese on top. I haven't been out to the garden and pick raspberries. I would probably have that instead of the pretzels, but this is what I have at the moment. Anyway, I just thought it'd be something fun to show you, and I'm going to go eat, and I will see you back later for dinner tonight. Hey everybody, tonight I'm going to make pizza for dinner, and I have most of my sourdough starter in this bowl, and I'm going to add some flour until I get enough to turn it into a dough. It's really not much more than that. And then you have to let it rise for a little bit and go ahead and spread it out in your pan. I'm going to do a regular pizza. I'm not doing deep dish. To my pizza crust, I like to add a tablespoon or so of oil, which is going to pretty much use up what I purchased. So I'm going to need to get some more. 2 items I've run out of is the oil and the milk. And then I'm just going to add a good pinch of salt. Whoa, that's way too much salt. Pinch of salt. Salt for flavor. And I'm going to mix this up until it becomes a dough. Okay, so just like my bread dough, I just put that into the pan to rise. So I'm using the bowl again because I didn't want to have to wash it and then use it again. I'm going to let my sourdough, it takes longer unless you put a little yeast in there to rise. So I'm going to let this sit for a couple of hours before I worry about making dinner. And it's just a way that I can do a succession of things without having to dirty up dishes in between. So anyway, once I get the pizza together, I'll give you a quick peek of what we had for dinner. All right, I wanted to show you my pizza before it goes in the oven. I put on, you probably can't see it, the turkey sausage that I saved, and this is the rest of that mushroom that I grew, the Phoenix oyster mushroom. So, use whatever you have around the house. I'm going to get this baked off, and we'll see what it looks like. Oh, by the way, this is a huge pan. It's like, I think 9 by 15 or 10 by 15. So we'll have plenty of leftovers for lunch tomorrow. All right, you guys, there is my finished pizza. I'm going to let this cool for a few minutes, cut it up, and then we're going to enjoy our dinner. I found 2 little cucumbers out in the garden today, so I'm going to cut those up to go with our pizza. All right, we enjoyed our pizza, and I picked myself a nice little carton of raspberries to have a snack tonight, and maybe some with a slice of pizza tomorrow, or I don't know, whatever I decide to cook. So anyway, give me a thumbs up, everybody. I really appreciate it. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. Otherwise, have a wonderful night.